Hello. Thank you all for joining us today for the What Works Cities Executive Leadership Conversation Series with Mayor Mahan of San Jose, California. I'm Rochelle Haynes, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Managing Director of the What Works Cities program. What Works Cities was created by Bloomberg Philanthropies and is led by Results for America. Our mission at Results for America is to invest in making what works the new normal at all levels of government, federal, state, and local. For the past 12 years, we have worked with decision makers to effectively invest in programs and policies focused on advancing resident well-being with a lens towards economic mobility. And the signature local initiative at Results for America is What Works Cities. What Works Cities was created in 2015 to recognize and celebrate local government for their exceptional use of data to inform policy decisions, allocate funding, improve services, and most importantly, engage residents and stakeholders. At What Works Cities, we support cities at all points on their data journey with a first of its kind standard of excellence that shows how investing in data and evidence-based programming and practices can lead to more equitable outcome for residents. We do this by setting a North Star on what good looks like, What Works City certification, and we complement that with free capacity building assistance to support cities and their staff as they strengthen their data practices, and inviting them to be part of a network of over 170 cities in North, Central, and South America to exchange ideas and share best practices. And we're building momentum by celebrating cities and elevating why this work is important, like today's conversation. For today's conversation, we have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Mayor Mahan of the What Works Cities Gold Certified City of San Jose. Mayor Mahan was elected as San Jose Mayor in 2022 and assumed the role in January 2023. Mayor Mahan was elected to the San Jose City Council in 2020, where he focused on improving quality of life for San Jose residents by making sure City Hall was responsive and accountable. And while as mayor, he has focused on public safety, clean streets, and housing. He has also worked diligently with San Jose's budget department to bring transparency and accountability to how government dollars are being spent, while also leaning in and being an early adopter of AI tools with the focus on how AI could be used responsibly, ethically, and leading with inclusivity. Today's discussion, we will learn more about Mayor Mahan's leadership with embracing and pioneering AI to foster innovation while ensuring its usage is responsible, transparent, and inclusive. Thank you, Mayor Mahan, for joining us.
Hi, Rochelle. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be in conversation with you today. We've gained so much as a city from working with What Works Cities, and we're proud of our gold certification, hoping to one day get to platinum. But really looking forward to the conversation. San Jose is based in the Bay Area in California. We are the capital of Silicon Valley. We're blessed to have an incredibly diverse and talented workforce and community here in San Jose, and they expect a lot of government. They hold us accountable to having a government that is transparent, that's effective, efficient, and that was what motivated me to run. Coming out of the tech sector myself, I wanted local government to work well, to serve everyone in our community and deliver better outcomes. And that's why I'm so excited to be working with What Works Cities and to be talking a bit today about what AI may mean for the future of our local governments and how it may be used to improve the way we serve our community. So I'm looking forward to getting into the conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. We're excited about the conversation. We all know AI, particularly generative AI, is the hot topic of the day. And so we're excited for our attendees. As we're chatting, please feel free to put your questions in the chat and our team will queue them up for the Q&A session. All right, let's jump in. What motivated San Jose to become a leader in the AI space? And are there specific initiatives that the city has undertaken to achieve this goal?
Well, as I just mentioned, outside of government, we're in an area that is rich with innovation. San Jose, as a metro, has more patents per capita than any other city in the country, and that includes in AI and machine learning. We're seeing incredible entrepreneurship and innovation happening outside of government, and those of us in City Hall are very motivated to bring that same spirit of innovation to government, because I actually think the public sector has the most to gain from embracing these technologies. We spend a tremendous amount of money and work on the most important problems in government, in the public sector, and new tools can enable us to deliver better outcomes. I'm convinced of that. And so what we've done in San Jose is, in addition to trying to continue to foster an innovation economy outside of government, we've tried to also invite entrepreneurs and academics into government to work with us to help us transform how we deliver services. We started early with thinking about privacy. We realized that early on, we need to convene external stakeholders, academics, community members, entrepreneurs, to help us think about the responsible use of AI. If we're going to embrace these new tools, the level of scrutiny in the public sector is frankly higher. People will accept a company failing, but government can't fail. We have to be here, and we have to have trust from the public. And so we really started by laying out that framework of how to use the tools responsibly and protect privacy, and that we've now begun to embrace AI applications in government. And we'll get more into those, I know, in our conversation, but just to give people a sense, we are using AI to optimize bus routes, for example, to ensure that people have a smoother and faster ride to work or wherever they need to go. We're beginning to use AI to detect objects in the roadway to help us achieve our Vision Zero goals of having zero traffic fatalities. And so we're beginning to experiment, but it's all built on that foundation of giving our city staff permission to use these tools and giving them some guardrails.
Now, I love that. And I think one of the things that stood out to me about the work that you're all doing is you did create an AI review framework for your staff on how to responsibly use it. Do you want to say a little bit more about that and share, like, what was at the heart of creating that framework?
That's right. So it started with a lot of questions, concern, and frankly fear. And I think part of what has allowed us to start to innovate by using AI tools has been giving some certainty and some guardrails to our team. And so we've convened an internal stakeholder group as well as an external digital privacy task force. And so we sort of have the internal group where people can have safe conversations and learn from one another. And it's enabled us to really refine our procurement process and to know, okay, which questions do we need to ask? And so we have a governance framework that creates general rules for the entire city for all departments, as well as department-specific policies around the use and procurement of AI tools. But we have that external check because we also have the working group with external thought partners and experts who can make sure that what our internal framework includes is actually being validated by outsiders. And so that dynamic has been very useful to us. What it's ultimately led to is something we're really proud of that we launched, which is called the Gov AI Coalition. We now are in conversation on a recurring basis with over 150 cities and counties across the country, where we have conversations about how to do procurement, how to set up your privacy policies, how to ensure that when you may be purchasing a new product, you're properly evaluating the vendor for cybersecurity risk, for example, and what questions to ask. And so that's led us to then collaboratively, we learn faster together. And so then that's led us into building a vendor registry list where now we're collectively vetting tools and starting to certify vendors and know, okay, who already kind of meets certain marks so that we're not all reinventing the wheel. So that's kind of been the evolution over the last 7-8 years as a city.
No, and I think that's wonderful. And I think for a lot of cities, it's like where to start. In cities, like you said, you acknowledge, you said, it's tough to fail in government because you serve the public, right? And so I'm just curious, what were some initial challenges that you faced when you were getting started? How did you overcome them? I know that there's staff are hesitant and reluctant to use new technology. How have you been communicating with the staff?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, what we found was that by creating, I was a little skeptical of this, I have to be honest with you. As a startup founder and entrepreneur, I have a general aversion to creating new rules. And so initially, as we were creating some guidelines and rules of the road for use of AI within City Hall about things like keeping your searches or your queries because they should be accessible to public records requests, or what rules need to be in place for data privacy and data retention. I frankly was a little worried that we were jumping too quickly into the rulemaking side of things rather than just experimenting, because again, I was coming from the startup world. But what I was pleasantly surprised to find is that by front loading those conversations and creating the guidelines and rules, if you will, for use, which can always be adapted and iterated on, but that actually gave greater certainty to the workforce. And people were more likely to be willing to try new tools and experiment when they kind of knew where the guardrails were, than what I naively thought coming from the private sector would be, hey, just go use some tools and see what happens, throw things at the wall, move fast and break things. And that's not the culture in government. And while we want to move a little closer to rapid iteration and experimentation, certainly, it's important when we're using public dollars and we're dealing with really critical, I mean, we have, our police department holds the power of life and death at times. I mean, these are serious. This isn't like we're just building the next food delivery app. I mean, some of these services that we're providing can mean life and death. And so we are held to a higher standard. And therefore, it's really important that you front load those conversations. Let me give you a specific example. We have a very thinly staffed police force. And like any city, one of our primary responsibilities is to provide for public safety. We became interested many years ago in the potential for automatic license plate readers to help us do law enforcement in a different way and to basically fill in and supplement the fact that we have very low staffing ratios in our police department. It's a tool that could make us smarter, could make us more effective and efficient. It's also a tool that could be abused. And there's a lot of fear about what does it mean if you're recording where I'm driving in my license plate. And so the way that we approached that was by having a lot of community conversations and developing that privacy framework and basically creating a very strict data retention policy. And so we delete that data on a regular schedule extremely quickly in a matter of days, unless it's being actively used in an investigation. And even then, there are very strict privacy protocols and data retention policies. And so, who can access the data? How quickly will it be deleted? When will it be retained? And for how long? Were questions we had to ask and answer for our community to get buy-in. And then the location. Are we going to put all of these in one neighborhood? No, of course not. That wouldn't be the right thing to do. We're going to evenly distribute them in our major intersections, and there's going to be a logic to this, and it'll be transparent where we're putting them. So, kind of working through that, for taking the time to work with the community, understand their questions and concerns, has allowed us to use a tool that has solved a lot of really serious crime, but done it in a way that hasn't stigmatized or marginalized or violated people's privacy or led to over-policing. And so striking that balance was really important for us. And I'm proud of the work we've done there.
No, and I love that you touched on that, because I think part of the hesitation has been these questions around bias and privacy concerns, which we shouldn't sort of downplay, right? Those are real questions. And so I'm just curious, and I love that you engaged the community members. Is there anything specific that you did with the community that kind of stood out to you about making sure they were part of the conversation, ensuring that there's equitable access? Just curious what your thoughts on, like, what's the role of the community in this work?
It's the whole ballgame in a way. I mean, we are representatives of and of the community and public servants. Ultimately, the community has to drive the decisions and the solutions and be bought in. And so taking the time to make sure people are aware of the new things we're doing and that they have a voice and can ask the toughest questions without a filter. As an aside, I was in a community meeting last night talking about solutions to homelessness and stayed for 3 hours because while people want us to solve homelessness, the solutions aren't always easy and they require trade-offs. So, one of the things we've done that has not been explicitly about being technology enabled or data driven, but actually has dovetailed really nicely, is we set up an office of racial equity. And I think we're now expanding that to racial and social equity. There's accessibility, concern, there's a lot of different elements of where we want to ensure we don't have systemic bias or ensure that government is accessible to everyone. And just to give a very simple example, we've for years known and gotten complaints about the quality of parks in different neighborhoods. And let's be honest, just because of historical decisions and biases and discrimination, we don't have an equal amount of park space in every neighborhood, and they're not of equal quality, and the amenities are not. We know that. That's the legacy of race in this country. And so being honest about that and then using data to actually look at our parks and have a common evaluative framework and say, well, how much park space is there? How long is the walk? What is the, based on objective measures, the quality of the park itself? How clean is it? What kind of amenities are in the park? Creating that robust scoring system and running that through our Office of Racial Equity has been really powerful, because I don't know that our Parks Department on its own would have necessarily gotten there, but now we have a way of saying, well, we can measure the quality of parks, of roads, we can measure outcomes, and we can start to map them and say, what do we need to do to get everybody up to at least an equal level of outcome that everybody deserves, right? And so that's the kind of work we're trying to do. It's not easy, and that change doesn't happen overnight, but that's what we're trying to do to get community buy-in.
No, and I think it's important because buy-in's important. And I think you also have been fostering some partnerships, right, to support your city's AI initiatives. What lessons have you learned along the way? And when I think of partners, I'm thinking it's obviously governments at the table, industry, academia, the community. Have there been lessons learned that you would want to share with other cities as they embark on this journey?
Yeah, I mean, the primary form of partnership in recent years has been this Gov AI coalition that we've set up, where we're in conversation with public sector leaders and administrators from across the country, and procurement and evaluation of vendors and use cases have been front and center. We're also having a lot of conversations with our local university. Academia is such an amazing resource. We're blessed to have an incredible public university in our downtown that has 36,000 students. And so we're increasingly thinking about how we partner with them. We actually have a shared library, one of the few public libraries in the country that is truly a joint venture with our public universities. So thinking about how we expand access to the very infrastructure and resources you need to experiment with AI. We don't want the frontier of technology and innovation to be only accessible to those who already have resources, have privilege. And so we're working with our university to think about how we leverage this shared resource of our library to create access for others. And that's an ongoing conversation. We haven't figured that out yet, but we know there are barriers to entry to developing new technologies and understanding them. And so whether it's access to computing power or data sets or just training, we've done a lot with our telecoms. Actually, we did a very innovative partnership early on where, in exchange for getting access to public infrastructure to place their devices essentially on city infrastructure, we in exchange get funding for closing the digital divide. And we've been able to expand broadband access to thousands of families in San Jose because of our innovative partnership with some of the larger telecom companies. So the list goes on and on, frankly. We're also experimenting in partnership with really small startups. We've got we had a hackathon last year. I mentioned object detection in roadways and our Vision Zero goals. We have a couple of years ago, we had 60 people killed on our roadways, many of them pedestrians and cyclists. And so we convened a global hackathon to give people access to cost-effective Sony cameras that could be mounted on city infrastructure and used to, in real time, detect when someone or something is in a road that shouldn't be there, and be able to maybe eventually, the idea being maybe that could change our signals, that we maybe the light needs to go red because somebody's out in traffic, or maybe we could send a signal to an autonomous vehicle. We don't quite know. It's sort of an unsolved problem, but we think there's an opportunity there. So we're trying to stay on the cutting edge of those new tools.
No, and I love that. And I want to uplift that you had pointed out about the broadband access. And I think that, we know for many years, it's just been that divide, right? That digital divide. And I think one of the things that has come up with AI is making sure that communities, underserved communities, are part of the conversation, are being kept up to date, getting the access to trainings and things like that, so that when this technology continues to take off in a big way, because I think we're going to have a very different world in city government in 5 years, that everyone, right, can have access to it as well. I think it's the pioneer of this in many ways. You all have been like at the forefront. We're excited. We also just want to hear what projects or pilots are coming up in San Jose that you can talk about, that you're excited about. And also, as you're thinking about these projects, how are you thinking about measuring success?
Yeah, great questions. Happy to share a couple. Let me start with a fairly straightforward one that may be relevant to many cities. We have a very diverse population. We're actually one of the most diverse cities in the country. We're about 40% foreign born. Over 50% of our households speak a language other than English at home. And so when we talk about access to government and resources and barriers to participation, language can be one. It shouldn't be. And technology increasingly gives us the ability to break down those barriers. We've found that because we already have so much Vietnamese language content, we actually have the largest Vietnamese population of any city outside of Vietnam. We've been able to use Google Translate's model, put in our own training set from the Vietnamese language data we have from all the queries we've gotten and all of the content our community has created in language, and improve upon the base model that Google Translate has for Vietnamese. And so that has a lot of applications for us in terms of being able to respond to our residents, one of the largest shares of the community in terms of population, in language in a way that reflects the way that they use the language colloquially. And so that's really, I think, exciting and meaningful, and it's already in use. And the data shows that by using that base model, but putting in our own training data, we can actually improve our translation of city resources and services. We're doing, I mentioned earlier, the bus route optimization. So we're really focused on signal prioritization, and have now implemented it on a couple of routes where we have been able to speed up transit times to further incentivize folks to get out of the single occupancy vehicle and try transit because it's more convenient. And so we've now deployed these sensors at 133 intersections across the city and are looking to do better signal prioritization across the board. We're also, one of the big challenges we have around trash, and I know New York City has this because I was reading the New Yorker just last night. We have a lot of contamination in our waste stream. We know that a lot of what's in there is either recyclable or compostable, but when it all gets mixed in, it goes to the landfill. And so there's actually value in this waste stream, and we could reduce how much we're wasting and having to take to the landfill if we could better sort and educate our community. And so we are beginning to experiment with something called the Zabel Waste Contaminant Identification System. And I haven't had a chance to go out and actually look at it myself yet, which I want to do. But basically, they're training this model on data that are top-down images of the waste bin. And then they have professional annotators who are actually scoring and training the model on, okay, well, what's in this waste bin and how do we target education to the community to get better at decontaminating, demixing these waste streams so that we can actually maximize the value there. I'll give you one more. I know I'm going on a long here, but
you're excited. I love it.
I'm excited. There's so many applications. We have a 311 service, as most cities do, that is still predicated on a complaint-based model. It requires a resident to say, I have this problem, I see this issue, I need a city service, basically. It's a service request complaint-based model. We are starting to use sensors, primarily just cameras on city vehicles, to experiment with sensing and recording what is on the street to give us insights so that we can be proactive and deliver a service prior to a resident needing to be inconvenienced and report it or complain about it. The most obvious example is pothole detection.
Yep.
We have city contracted vehicles that cover every mile of every road in the city every single week. we should not require any resident to ever call us to complain about a pothole. We should know where they are and get out there and fix them before they become a problem and put wear and tear on people's vehicles. We're also finding, though, that we're able to identify when a street light is out and get to it faster. We also, and this is actually, we've been in the news a lot the last couple of weeks about this one, and I want to make sure we're clear about how we're using this, but we're able to predict when people are living in vehicles. And that's important because we have a very large homeless population, and a large share of those individuals live in cars and RVs, and they need services too. We can't have the 800 some lived in RVs in the city dumping bio-waste right into the waterways. And so if we can get out there once a week and pick up the bio-waste from the RVs, that's a win for everybody, including our environment. And if we can offer people social wraparound services and help them get into housing, that's a win, rather than spending all of our time just trying to figure out where people experiencing homelessness are in the city. And so, again, we have to be really clear about use cases, privacy controls, governance, but I'm really optimistic that we can anticipate and more proactively and efficiently respond to just what's happening out at the street level in our city using these tools.
Wonderful. Now, some great innovations. We're going to pivot to audience questions. And the first one is, what strategies has San Jose implemented to engage and train its staff on AI?
It's a great question. We have staffed up our IT department to have full-time people on staff who are able to kind of work across the different departments. The departments don't have that expertise. And so we created essentially a more centralized function or clearinghouse within our IT department, where use cases, guidelines can kind of go out, use cases can come in, and then trainings can happen. I'm not personally sitting in most of those, so there's probably some follow-up we could provide on how we actually do it in practice, to be perfectly honest. It's a big city with 1 million residents and 7,000 city employees, but I know from where I sit that having a really empowered and properly staffed IT department, or whatever your technical or innovation team is really important for being able to convene employees and do trainings and evaluate use cases and basically be that thought partner and internal consultant.
Yeah, no, I think in that centralization is important in doing this. I think the second question you already started to touch on, which is, what steps or strategies might you recommend to identify use cases across city operations?
That's a good one. I'd encourage folks to look at our GovAI coalition and consider joining. So the group meets on a recurring basis, and one of the things that's discussed are different use cases different cities are exploring, and the potential solutions, including potential vendors. And so the whole idea is to accelerate our learning by just sharing what we're all doing. I mean, we see use cases that largely come out of what our residents tell us. What are their biggest priorities? And then thinking about, with the limited resources we have, how can we deliver greater community safety, or how can we deliver a cleaner community, or how can we speed up permitting is one I'm really interested in. Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that one yet, but that's one we're starting to think about. So I think the use cases really come from the community and from listening.
Yeah, I think it's that organic, sort of way of like engaging folks that kicks things up. And I think that I love just, again, residents, community being part of the innovation and not just the recipients of it. It leads to just better outcomes, stronger cities. Next question is, are you using Pacific software, this may be too in the weeds for you, to help better understand use and equity in your parks?
It's a good question. I don't know, and we can follow up. My sense from what I've seen is that it has still been fairly manual and off the shelf tools. I think it's an interesting question, though, just kind of thinking off the cuff here. Based on what we're doing on roadways, where we have a city vehicle with cameras from 4 different startups, where we're driving down the road and figuring out, okay, what can we learn? There are potholes. There's some illegal dumping on that corner. There's some graffiti on that wall. That street light went out. That vehicle maybe is abandoned because it hasn't moved in 6 months, right? Those are the kinds of insights we're starting to generate by just putting cameras on some city vehicles. And of course, privacy, we don't show any faces, and we get rid of the license plate. And I mean, we clean the data and we delete the data. So, but in real time, it can help us identify where there may be an issue to respond to that we wouldn't otherwise know about. I could imagine us, to the point of this question, doing something similar in our parks, where we could probably, with the declining cost of sensors and cameras and then the analytical tools, probably have better real-time monitoring of what's happening in the parks. We're not doing that today. It's a pretty manual process, but I could imagine us getting there eventually.
Yeah, that's an interesting way. And I think that, again, this is the innovation part. You're using it right now for one use case. And it's like, as you're real time thinking, you're like, hey, maybe I can use this for the parks. And so maybe it'll inspire the person that asked that question. The next question is, what advice would you give to municipal leaders who are just beginning to explore these technologies? It's like where to start, because there's so much information out there, and everyone uses the term AI in a very general way. And it's like generative AI is what's new. We've been using predictive analytics. That's not as new. But if someone just wanted to get started, where should they start?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, yeah, I agree. We kind of have to demystify and disaggregate this notion of AI. It's sort of, there are many different flavors of it. I sort of just think about, basically, we're trying to figure out where can machine intelligence augment and improve what we're doing. Where can we? It's not. It really shouldn't be about necessarily displacing people. It should be about the toolkit that they have, and where can we take things that are often manual and better automate or better predict where things are going, or automate a response to something. So there's so many different ways. You know, again, I hate to keep being a broken record on this Gov AI coalition, but I think getting in direct touch with other practitioners who are at the level of running departments and actually doing the day-to-day work of government, of paving roads and maintaining parks and running libraries. I think being in dialogue with the people who are doing that frontline work is probably where the greatest value is going to be. One thing I would suggest, though, especially if you're an elected official like me and you're kind of looking at it from 30,000 feet and trying to make policy across a variety of issue areas and sort of leading at that sort of high level, is you have to find the internal champions who are closer to the work. And I mentioned our IT department. We're just very fortunate to have a cohort of leaders in that department who don't see their job as just maintaining what they've always done, but see it as driving innovation. And you really need people in the organization who are not just the electeds. It's one thing for the electeds to say, you have permission to innovate. We're going to put some money to do it. We want you to do it. Here's some problems we'd love you to go try to solve or do better on. It's another thing, though, to have leaders within departments who say, part of my job is actually to innovate. And I think that from the elected role, it's about culture. It's about saying, we're going to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We want to always be learning. We want to have a culture of continuous learning and innovation. We're going to experiment. We're going to take risks, but here are the guardrails, because we can't violate the public trust. But within that sandbox, we're going to experiment. But ultimately, that's all important and necessary. But you have to have the hands-on practitioners. And I would say part of it may be creating professional development budgets, creating dollars and time for people who are interested in innovating to actually go indulge that interest and learn and try things. I think you kind of have to start there. I don't think you can just force innovation.
Yeah, that's great. Follow up from that person, is the AI vendor registry publicly accessible?
That's a good question. And I don't
believe so. And in my own prep, I believe so, but if the team can verify and put that, I feel like it is publicly available.
Yeah, we'll see if my team can answer that in the Q&A on Zoom. You may have to register with the coalition. I don't know, but I don't know. Well, anyway, I'll have my team.
Yes, we'll get you an answer.
Yeah, great.
Okay, next question. What are 3 important questions that a mayor's office should ask a new AI vendor when trying to assess if it's the right fit for the city's needs?
Oh, wow. Well, I will admit that in the mayor's office specifically, we don't generally procure the services directly. That's usually being done at a departmental level. Sometimes it is citywide, but in that case, it might be through our IT department. We're very interested in understanding their track record, understanding their cybersecurity is something that our IT team focuses a lot on. There have been some very highly publicized cases of cyber attacks. And so we spend a lot of time trying to understand cybersecurity risk. We have our own data retention policies. And so we have to make sure that they can conform to our policies around deletion of data, not sharing or even storing privately identifying information in a lot of cases. And so making sure that our rules that we've developed, which again, you can kind of get a template for that by joining the GovAI coalition, that our rules conform with how their tools can be used. And sometimes it may just not be a fit. They may not be at a level of maturity or sophistication that aligns with what we need as kind of our baseline. So I think starting by developing what are your rules of the road? I mean, what are the privacy and data retention policies? And you can borrow from other cities. The great thing about the GovAI coalition is we have a lot of cities that have already were learning from each other and are farther ahead in this. And so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can get a template from somebody else, and then understanding. And this is a more technical piece that isn't my background, but having an IT department or equivalent that can really evaluate cybersecurity risk is important. That's kind of where I would focus initially.
Okay, no, that sounds great. And we're on our final question. These time together always go so quickly. What is your vision for the future of San Jose as a hub for AI innovation? How will you achieve this?
Yeah, I think we'll achieve it by being in conversation with cities around the world and learning from one another, and being bold, being willing to keep trying things and share information, and understanding that we won't be the most innovative city in every single area. We're going to have to pick ours, and that should be driven by the community. The community's priorities should guide us in terms of where we push ourselves the most to innovate, and we create that space through funding, through time, through permission, through highlighting and celebrating successes and failures, because we learn from failures, and really letting that be community driven. Our community's been very clear. They want us to address our housing crisis, our homelessness crisis, community safety issues. That's where we're focusing right now. And so that's where we should be the most innovative and try new things. But my vision for government is that it really should be a platform. It should be a place where residents come to prioritize problems and solutions, where they can access services, where we facilitate the aspirations of our community and do that in the most efficient and effective way. We should be a platform for the success of the broader community, the broader city. And I think that's only possible if we keep innovating and we're more technology enabled. We need government to be more productive. We have to keep upgrading the way that we do things and not get stuck in this trap of how things are is just inevitable, or that's how we've always done it, or the lawyers told us no, or we don't have the money for that. I mean, there's a thousand excuses for not changing, and we need to change the culture in government and say, no, we're going to have a culture of continuous improvement. We're going to keep learning and experimenting, and we're going to even just start with one issue where we're going to experiment and continue. And so that's really how I think about it. And I feel very privileged to be in a city where there are many other innovators at all levels in City Hall who want to push government to work better, to find out how our city can be at the forefront of working well to serve our community. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping to do. And it's been great to work with Bloomberg and What Works Cities and really have a thought partner who can give us access to a network and bounce ideas and share best practices. And we're really grateful for that partnership.
Yeah, and we're grateful for you and your leadership. I think this has been a great and important and timely conversation today. I think you touched on it. Cities are the place for innovation. It's where innovation happens, and exciting today to hear what's happening in San Jose, with you all being a pioneer on this work. And I think most importantly, I think what stands out to me is like you're adopting innovation, you're leaning in, but you're also setting those guardrails and those guidelines and outwardly addressing staff concerns, community concerns, but also inviting them to be part of the process, right? And I think that's one of my takeaways today is that let's lean in, let's innovate, let's make sure all stakeholders are part of the process. And that's where we're going to get the greatest creation. That's when cities start to really drive. And so Mayor Mahan, thank you so much for your leadership and your time today. We really appreciate it. We're excited to see where San Jose will be the next 2, 5, 10, 15 years. I think great things are in store. I did want to thank your team as well and my team for organizing this webinar. And we encourage everyone who joined today to please stay connected by signing up for our newsletter, becoming part of our global community of leaders. And my team will share more in the chat. We'll also share more in the chat about the AI Coalition so folks can know when and where and how to engage as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rochelle. I appreciate
Thank you. Appreciate it.
it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.